Hello, and today I'm turning this Rapunzel doll into Annabelle from the Conjuring and Annabelle series. First, I start off by removing all of her original paint with an acetone-based nail polish remover. Then I go in with scissors and cut off all of her hair. Then, with warm water, I get her head soft so that I can remove her head without breaking the anchor. After that, I use a pair of needle nose pliers to pluck out all of the little hairs. Once they're all out, I use the nail polish remover again just to remove the paint on her head. Then, using a needle I broke in half at the eye, I begin to reroot her hair. I do this by folding the hair pieces in half and just pushing them into the holes that were previously made. Then, after what seems like an eternity, I got one row complete. After this, I use an orange Sharpie to create a guideline for my middle part and bangs area. Then I create the middle part by taking the hair on the left side and putting it on the right, and vice versa. Now I'm just doing the bangs in the same fashion to try to create a seamless look. After that, I am just filling in the gaps and then styling the hair how I want it to look in the end. Then I pour hot water on it to set it in place, let it dry, and now I'm using a 2-part epoxy sculpt to sculpt the face. As you can see, a large portion of the face is already sculpted, and that's because I filmed it and then I accidentally deleted it. But nevertheless, I am using epoxy sculpt and sculpting tools to try to shape out her face. I'm also using water on my finger to smooth out the edges. I am building up her brow bone and trying to create an even space for her eye sockets. Then, once this all dries, it is time to move on to the eyes, and after a bunch of trial and error, I get the eye shape that I like. Now it's just a matter of blending it and getting it set in place. I decided to put a crack in her right eye because I thought the asymmetrical look gave her a more creepy feel. Then, after this, I am using a Mod Podge clear sealant to prime her face, and now it's time to get painting. I start by using a light cream color as a base, so it will be easier to blend the sculpt and the plastic in the end. Then after that, I go in with a darker skin tone color. After giving her a couple coats of the skin tone color, I start on the eyes just by filling them in with white, and then I go in with the darker skin tone color just to give her face a little more texture. Now I'm filling in her lips with just a red paint. After this, I give the eyes another coat of the white because I want them to be as white as possible, and now I'm filling in the cracks and giving them a little bit more depth. Then, once this is dry, I seal the face yet again, and I'm just going back over the lips, and after that, I'm starting on the eyes. Then I use a Q-tip covered in blue paint to try to get the positioning of the irises as perfect as possible. Of course, I then go in with white paint to try and clean up the edges. After I get the edges cleaned up, I go in with a darker blue to shape out the irises. After that, I use the white to try and clean up the edges yet again. Now I'm going in with the white to give Annabelle some teeth, and I'm cleaning that up with her red lipstick. After that, I'm giving her some blush on her cheeks. Now I'm going in with black paint to outline her eyes, and I'm using a watered paint brush to feather this out. After outlining her eyes, I clean them up a little bit, and I'm also fixing the blue in her eyes, and just texturing it more to make it look more realistic. After this, I feather out her eyeliner just a little bit more, and then I go in right under her lip to give her that iconic Annabelle look. Now I'm just cleaning up the eyes and adding a little bit more color to give it more depth. I do this by blending whites and blues to add more texture. Then I outline her eyes yet again, and now I'm just adding a darker color into the creases of her face and the nostrils of her nose, and just blotching on some wet brown to give her a more dirty look. Now I'm using a black acrylic to place in her pupils, and of course I'm also using the black to more define the crack in her right eye. Moving on to the lips, I am using a darker red and a lighter red to give her a little bit more dimension, also adding into the whites and just cleaning it up altogether. Once that's done, I go back to the eyes. I'm using a Sharpie to outline the irises, and then I go in with various different alcohol markers just to give her eyes a little bit more depth. Once the eyes are done, it's time to move on to the eyebrows, and I do this by sketching them out with a lighter alcohol-based marker, and of course, if the placement isn't correct, I just erase it using water. Once I get the placement that I desire, I go in with a darker alcohol marker and just solidify the look. Then I outline the eyes for a final time, and now it's time for eyelashes. I used regular drugstore eyelashes that I cut into the desired shape that I wanted, and I am applying them to the bottom of her lashes and, of course, to the top in the outer corners. Now that the eyelashes are glued in place, it's time to add the finishing touches, and I do this by giving her the white dots in her eyes to make them glow, and of course giving her lips a little bit of a shine, and her nose as well. Once her face is complete, it's time to move on to the body. I wanted to give Annabelle bent knees so that she could sit properly, and I did this by cutting off her legs at the knees and then using epoxy sculpt to get the desired bend I wanted. I start off with a crude shape, and then I set it on a can just so that it will dry in the place that I want it to. After this, it is time to clean up those rough edges, and I just do this by using the epoxy sculpt and the water just to smooth it out so it doesn't look so lumpy. Then once this is dry, I did the same thing that I did with the face, and I use a light cream color as a base, and then I go in with a more natural color. Once this is all painted, I use the clear sealant to give it a couple coats, and now it's time to apply the head. She's finally finished. I'm really happy with how Annabelle turned out, and if you liked it, let me know. Also, if you have any suggestions on what I should do next. Until then, see you next time.